I was recently invited by a nice fellow named Nate over at a channel called Garden Like a Viking, and he asked me to join him in a live session a few weeks ago. Nice hour and a half long chat. Lots and lots of great questions were put forward that he asked me, as well as his community, and he was kind enough to both record the session so it's available on his channel, but also give me permission to edit it down and share it on this one. So without further ado, here is a nice long conversation about gardening and polycultures and guilds, incorporating perennial aspects into annual gardening with my new friend Nate. If you're interested in his channel, I put a link in the description. You might want to check him out and consider subscribing.
Why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself? I mean, many of my viewers know you, of course, but many of them don't. And so just introduce yourself. Who are you? What you about? What you got going on?
Sure. So my name's Sean, last name's Dombrowski, and I am part of a project called Edible Acres. So you can learn more if you want. It's edibleacres.org is our website, and we are primarily a permaculture nursery, which means we try to grow all the different layers of temperate cold climate food forest plants. So canopy species, trees, shrubs, all the way down to cane layer, herbaceous, and then ground cover layer that are all food and medicine plants, and disseminate those out across the US through shipping as bare root, but also do local sales. And so I've been doing that now for a little shy of 15 years or so, 18 years, something like that. And then the YouTube channel is also Edible Acres, where we try to document all the different projects we're up to. We raise chickens almost entirely on compost and food scrap, waste stream chicken production, and low-tech nursery techniques and plant propagation techniques that we share with folks. So, I mean, there's lots more to add to all that, but that's the gist. We help grow and disseminate lots and lots of plants, and we try to disseminate knowledge around how other folks can do that for themselves as well.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. That's a pretty good bio there. So then you are in what zone? Where are you located for people?
Yeah, thanks. We are in central New York State in the Finger Lakes area. So if anybody knows like Ithaca, New York, we're pretty close, within a short distance of that. And historically, zone 5B, so like negative 25 Fahrenheit is possible, but on average, we're quite a bit warmer. We had negative 10 this winter for a night, but for the most part, we're zone 6, zone 7-ish trending. And trying to lean into that over time. Like we have Russian pomegranates that we're working with, and perennial gingers from the mountains of Korea that seem like they could work here, and they are so far. And I kind of riding the wild wave of climate unraveling, whatever that means, but trying to have plants that are increasingly adapted to both colder and warmer for what we're up to.
Very nice. Okay, so we're in very similar climates. I'm in northern Indiana, zone 5/6, we'll just
Mm-hmm.
call it. And so uh, I've begun at the Viking North plot. We've begun building a sort of orchard. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with actual fruit trees and shrubs. That's not my specialty, really. So, what would you suggest would be some really good things for me and my place from your cache or your thing that I would want to plant? And when do I want to plant those? And what kind of harvest would I be looking at and things?
Yeah, I mean, there's just like an infinite number of options, so it's hard to hone in. I'll rattle off a couple of like my top three, top five, what I consider permaculture plants for cold climates that just make sense, and then you can always add around them. And so for anybody similar, cold winters, maybe hot or warm summers, decent amount of rainfall. One of the very first core plants I think belong in any landscape in the shrub layer is the black currant. They're extremely easy to propagate from dormant cuttings. They're pretty close to fully deer proof. They're rabbit proof. No voles mess with them. They're shade tolerant. They can grow in wet context. They can grow as an understory to trees. They're extremely anti-cancer. And we make wine. We make a wild wine from black currant that'll blow any like Chilean grape wine out of the water. And so it's like it makes this phenomenal medicine that also is kind of boozy and fun if that's what you're into, which I like those things. Similar picture with elderberry, easy to propagate from cuttings. To me, it's the intersection of they make good tasting or decent tasting food, very good quality medicine, some combination of that. Extremely easy to propagate and resilient without much effort. Those are the plants that like always rise to the top for me. And so I'm almost always suggesting elderberry and currants, especially because cuttings, you just stick the, we're processing thousands of cuttings right now. That's a major part of what we sell. And they're just, it's like a magic wand. You push it in the ground and then put some wood chips around there if you have the time, and dot dot dot, it becomes a shrub, and in a year or so it starts to make fruit, and then you can photocopy them all around the landscape. um, in the herbaceous layer, I love sorrel. We've got a variety that never really seems to bolt, and my wife makes sag paneer in the summer where she harvests the sorrel greens, and it's basically perfectly equal parts lemon and spinach in a perennial plant that's like indestructible. It just, there's never going to be a winter cold enough to hurt sorrel. Um, we work a lot with stinging nettles, which you can find wild, but I think extremely nutrient dense and really great for out of the garden. Like that's part of all this work is how do we set up planting systems that, you know, where we reserve our zone one. Like your specialty, your strength is in like really intensively producing zone one crops in the permaculture idea of like your backyard garden, your high production, like the annuals that are on your plate almost every meal throughout the year, and often needs protection from deer and rabbits. They need watering, they need a lot of attention in order to crop as heavily as they do. And our plants tend to be the ones like right on the outside of the fence. You can start planting these, and you know, sometimes you start them on the inside the garden and then take your copies and put them outside. And I think that's where there's a really sweet dovetailing of the extreme value of building your annual cropping understanding and having that be at the heart of your agricultural work, and then supplementing that and amplifying it with your perennials that are in orbit, like this, a little further out, a little further afield, or you've got some white ash that are passing away from emerald ash borer, or some sugar maples that are in decline, and starting to add pawpaws around them and hazelnuts and these other next successional plants. Um, so that's kind of the vibe of what we're going for, is like leaving the prime real estate for nursery work and for annuals and filling everywhere else out with all these food medicine plants that you'll walk around our 6 acre spot that's about 15 years old now, and it's hard to tell what was planted by us or what was there to begin with. And but there's like 4 or 5 thousand trees that have been added, and they're all, it's like depending on when you get there, there's just carpets of food on the ground for anybody that gets there first. And that to me is permaculture in a nutshell. Is like there's just food, edible acres, like everywhere you go there's food at all the levels.
Oh, I really like that. Boy, I'm seeing a potential for a collaboration video, really, because there is, what would just off the top of your head, what would you suggest? So last year I planted these orchards. We planted like 12 trees, that were about this tall. They
Mm-hmm.
were cherry or plum and peach, a combination, and then we planted a couple fig bushes.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of close by, and there's about 30 feet in between, the plants. And so at this point it's just grass in between there.
Yeah.
And so what would you and it's in wide open. I mean, this is just like a we just started it, so I can get my feet wet with all this kind of stuff. So
Yep.
what would you suggest we go from there?
Yeah, I mean, 30 feet between rows, it's like the world, it's wide open what you can do with that. And especially if the plants, so you could establish sun-loving plants in that context in the center. So if it's 15 feet from the one row and 15 feet from another, you could have all sorts of shrubs that really enjoy full sun and are also competent in partial shade. And so my mind goes to something like hazelnut, for example, which you could plant out little blocks of hazelnut for pollination thickets. And so they act as a windbreak. They love full sun. They'll crop heavily in full sun, but they could also grow in the eventual shade of a plum. You know, if it's a little bit of distance. Goumi, Goumi, is a cousin to autumn olive that is fantastically adaptable. It deals well with drought, likes full sun, but will make a good crop in partial shade. Serviceberry could tuck in there if you had protection from deer. Aronia. In fact, you might like Aronia. There's a variety called Viking that you might want to track down. That'd be fun. A really good productive variety that you might enjoy. And I mean, there's just like a million other plants, but to to me, that's an immense amount of space in between those. And there's also, so that's one layer of additional planting. There's also the immediate area directly around every tree. There's value in digging down into the concept of the guild or polyculture, where you say, for example, I put in this young peach, a grafted peach, and I put a bunch of compost around it and mulch. I want to keep the weeds down around the peach. I don't want grass to be growing up through the peach because then we've got voles and we've got root competition. But it's a lot of work to put wood chips every month or two, or to hand weed all the grass out. And so with permaculture, the idea is how do we nod in the direction that the inevitability is around each of these trees will be some perennial herbaceous plant. Almost certainly it's grass if we leave it as it is, but can we do better than that? And so then the guild idea is, what does it look like the ring around each of those trees? Can you plant something like horseradish or comfrey or rhubarb that block the grass from coming in? They're called rhizome barriers. They have deep, deep roots that go crazy deep into the earth and bring nutrients up and deposit them on the soil as mulch, and they offer yields that you can get at. Strawberries can be a ground cover underneath a young plum tree. You've got mints, you've got chives, all sorts of really hardy perennials, all of those plants being pretty repulsive to voles, which are some of the single most damaging. They're the tiniest and yet the most devastating to a young orchard, is tall grass going into the winter all around these trees, and the voles are coming in and they find the bark of the trees. And where we plant garlic and chives or bee balm, all sorts of really pungent aromatic perennials right around the base of the trees, it's not a silver bullet, but almost entirely we have no vole pressure without any fencing around our trees. So it's those plant companionships, and none of those plants get in the way of the trees. They actually amplify the growth of the trees because they promote fungal growth in the wood chip layer. They partition resources. Grass is really light and moisture hungry, and the plants I'm listing, they do their work in different strata in the soil, so they actually partner with the plants a lot more nicely.
Man, so much good info there. Yeah, definitely. That gets the wheels turning in all kinds of things because that was definitely my thought. When I'm looking at all this space in between everything now, I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot of grass. That's a
Hmm.
lot of, and you can only put a ring of mulch, so far out, and
Right,
that's going to decompose and everything. So,
right.
uh,
Yeah, as an annual cropper, annual gardener, or farmer, what I'd encourage is if perennials are not on the horizon just yet, in my mind, it's like set the intention and look out towards the future where you are thinking about perennials around each of those trees. It's a perfect fit. In the
okay.
meantime, every circular space that you're maintaining as nearly weed free around the base of the trees that is also fenced in is perfect conditions for growing early wonder tall top beet. Right now, your French breakfast radishes can be sown into there. They're roots, but they don't go very deep. They're not going to get in. They're going to live in the mulch layer, the compost layer that you've established there. Maybe on the outer parts of it, on the outside of the ring, is it pushing in, mammoth melting snow peas to climb the fence and provide you snow peas? If they get into the tree and become problematic, cool, you cut them and feed them back to the trees or feed them to chickens. Is it winter squash in between each of the trees where it's like, okay, you've got a tree, grass for 15 feet, and another tree. Right in between, you dump a wheelbarrow of compost, put butternut squash seeds in there, and maybe some corn. Let that grow for a season, and then in the fall, that could be an elderberry or a hazelnut, and the what's left over from being an annual crop in there. So, fundamentally, details aside, the gesture is at the permaculture principle of integrate rather than segregate. And that's to say, integrate your annual growth into your perennial systems. Your orchard and your annuals can absolutely merge seamlessly, and they all are happy to be doing that together.
Oh, wonderful. I love that philosophy, definitely. And I am definitely seeing a collaboration video. Sounds good.
For sure.
There's Tiny Farm says, watched a dozen or so of Sean's videos. Will revolutionize your thinking and approach to your garden and land. Easily my favorite channel on YouTube.
Wow.
That's a high compliment. A fantastic teacher, and he and Sasha are inspiring humans. All right,
Thank
so
you.
you're getting some love for sure.
Don't forget Juan. Juan is a key partner of our whole project. He's out there working on cuttings while I'm in here blabbing. So we got to make sure we keep all. And Zelda, our little daughter, will be part of this whole thing as we go along. She learned what chickweed was the other day. She didn't like the flavor, but she fed me a whole bunch, and so we'll be getting seeds in her hands. She's 1.5, and I think she'll be starting a whole bunch of seeds with us this spring.
Nice. Get those memories planted.
Yeah.
Okay, Big Will Dog says, question for Sean. How best can I use the invasive mint the previous owners of my house planted? They keep coming back and want to use them, and I want to use them.
Yeah. I mean, lowest hanging fruit is like get into eating mint. Like we make tabbouleh in the summer, and that consumes a lot of mint. You make mint tea. You get the like. You can make ice cream. You can harvest tons of it and dry it so that you have delicious fresh mint tea and medicine in the winter. I mean, that's kind of like a no-brainer. If it's excessive beyond that, what does it look like to cut the mint along with other leafy excess plants, dandelions, etc., put it in water and create anaerobic compost teas? Like there's lots of minerals and nutrients in those mint leaves. You can add it into like a so to speak tea blend that feeds your other plants. You can consider mint as the robust ground cover to a cane layer that has yet to be added. So for example, I grew up where my mom planted spearmint as an understory to her raspberries. And the two felt competitive, but they actually partitioned light and resources just fine. And my favorite thing was to take the mint, I would pull a mint leaf and pick a raspberry with the mint leaf and eat it together. And there'd be ants crawling all over them. I ate those too. But mint can be a like strong ground cover to something like it wouldn't work with strawberry. It wouldn't work with lettuce. So like that's the goal is like, okay, mint exists there. Let's give up on it being a microgreens lettuce bed. It's not in the cards, but can you put currants in there? Can you add raspberries? Are there black caps? Are there blackberries? Is it honeyberry? Are there shrub cane layers that you can walk on the mint all day and it doesn't matter? And they just exist and do their thing, and pollinators can have fun. So, and encouragement. I mean, I won't go too deep into it, but I personally get like little prickles when I hear the word invasive because I feel like and I'm not giving you a hard time at all. I don't want to get into a whole thing, but I think there's more complexity to be explored than that term. So I like other adjectives. Like what do I do with this robust, well adapted,
Vigorous,
continually expanding plant? How can I ally with that? Just something to frame it, because then you're less the idea that you're battling anything in order to protect the whole war thing goes away, and it becomes just like camaraderie and exploration of relationship between some that are a little tough, some that are a little weak, but you're working with everybody. And invasive, I feel like, gets in the way of lubricating that mind process, and it feels a lot sweeter and a lot healthier when I think of everybody as characters to explore who they are and how we relate to them.
Yes, I really like that framing a lot because you do hear that, and it is a sort of battle mentality. I've got this
Yeah,
invasive stuff that is just taken over, and I'm battling against. You hear that all the time,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
that's
Battling invasives, they almost always are in the same sentence. And like, I don't think of myself, I'm not a warrior. I'm not going out with like a sword or guns or bombs. I'm going out with a watering can and packets of seeds. I have a hori hori, and that's like as close to a sword as I'm going to get. But I use that for transplanting. So
hmm
you know,
hmm Okay, so for somebody that is just sort of for somebody that is sort of getting into or wants to has a little bit of space and they want to get into sort of permaculture thing, what are your top 3 or 5 combinations? Like what are things that you would always like if someone's got a blank slate, what are some things that you would plant together because they're just like the good combinations?
yeah, like, so to use your example, many people will have a garden where they think I want to establish an orchard as well, and it'll be a grafted apple or a peach or a plum, whatever.
Yes.
In those contexts, like, so whatever that's going to be, the tree layer, strong encouragement is to have at least a little bit of comfrey as an edge plant between the where the tree area ends and the lawn or mowed area begins, to consider comfrey as a rhizome barrier or rhubarb as a rhizome barrier. You need to be careful because if you ever dig in there, it spreads. So it's tricky. Comfrey is, but that's like kind of a quintessential example of guild is the rhizome barrier dynamic accumulator of comfrey with a tree. I think co-planting garlic or chives right up against the base of any given tree is, to me, a no-brainer. We grow garlic at a commercial scale. I have leftover garlic, not to grow for harvest, but just to leave as a perennializing element. It is my vole protection, and it works well enough for me. And then thinking about like really long flowering pollinator companion plants. I like bee balm more than I like the standard peppermint and spearmint because it's a little less spready. But like, is it oregano? Is it thyme? Is there somebody in mentha family that can provide long browse, medicinal browse for your bees? Like lemon balm is another one. It's spready, but under the context of a tree, it's no problem. So those are three like herbaceous or a couple of herbaceous companions for a tree layer that I think are no-brainers. But I mean, we'll use, for example, we have sorrel as a rhizome barrier. There's one guild, for example, it's a Hall's hardy almond. So it's basically a peach, but it's an almond tree. And to the south of that almond, by where the mowed lawn meets the garden space, is sorrel. Just on the inside of that is oregano. So I've got more complexity, a little bit more sprawl, and different things we can harvest there. There's then the peach tree growing. And then to the north of that is a gooseberry, because the gooseberry is spiky and can kind of climb through the low branches of the almond tree. And it likes shade. It's comfortable with shade. So it can be under, like literally quite under the almond tree and still doing its work. And I often will put currants, either black or red currants, just to the south and west of trees like peaches. So for example, you'll see a lot of people paint the bottom of their peach trees white in order to prevent sun scald in the spring, right? The sun energy gets really intense, but they haven't leafed out yet. Well, you don't have to use paint. You can put an early leafing, shade tolerant shrub to the south and the west, and it will offer the shade to the peach, but then you can actually eat the fruit. So like honeyberry and black currants are both the latex paint replacer of the orchard, if that makes sense too. And they also keep rabbits from chewing the bark of the trees because rabbits don't like black currants.
Okay,
Um,
so my as I'm envisioning this, I'm thinking, okay, this is great. Now, how are you de-establishing what is already there? Because at least here, like if we just kind of plant into something, it is well the weeds are enormously aggressive. There's some of those vigorous growers that spread,
yeah.
wonderfully, and they would just smother everything out. So what are your techniques when you would first start something for allowing things like oregano would just get totally lost in
Yeah.
in the weeds?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a homeopathic approach. Like if the concern are plants that smother, then my action is to smother. Like I offer up to those plants what they're offering up in their morphology or their behavior. And so like where we live, there's a lot of hay growing, and there are farmers that I check with them that they're not spraying any of like the broadleaf herbicide stuff. We don't really have a lot of that spray in New York State, but whatever. I'll get as many waste bales of like old moldy hay or whatever, and where I know I want to plant later, I'll put down thick flakes of hay. I'm not going to mow. I'm not going to hand weed. I'm not going to get bare soil. I'll take the tallest grasses there are, goldenrod, whatever. I lay them flat mid-season after a good rain while it's still like the soil's warm, they're actively growing, and I'll put on like whatever amount I can get for free or for like under $10 for a day. I'm pretty frugal with this stuff, but I'll just go deep. And I don't think then, oh, now that I've done this once, I'm done. Stuff will pop through. Cool. I'll fold it over and lay more. Maybe I'll dump an entire leaf bag. Like I'll pick up hundreds of leaf bags every fall from folks that spend their weekends harvesting them for me for some reason.
Oh yeah.
They put them out for the leaf fairy, and I guess I'm the leaf fairy now. But we just basically keep mulching until the plants start to weaken. And oregano wouldn't be the first plant to go in because they do get run over so fast. But I would put the sorrel and the comfrey and the rhubarb, which are like competitors. They can really hold the space and then mulch a lot around them. And then once it feels like, okay, the other stuff's starting to wind down, it's becoming more mycelial and fungal in here. Now let me add some oregano. Let me add some, some thyme, some other characters that might not be able to handle it right out of the gate. But I mean, I can drill into it too. Like we grow potatoes for a season. I made a bunch of videos about potatoes or lawn into potatoes, or I erased my lawn with potatoes. We'll use that as a pioneering crop to erase sod for a season. It's basically, instead of using solarization with tarps or anything, we just grow potatoes right in the lawn until harvest, dig all the potatoes out, plant garlic into that with more mulch. And then by the time garlic comes out the next year, you're at like 98% weed free, fluffy for 12 inches kind of soil. And you've gotten 2 crops out of it. And then you can start your guilds in those where it's like, you've got a really clean slate, a good canvas to draw your perennials into.
Oh, wonderful, man. The philosophy is just so beautiful. And so how much of your time do you spend hand weeding then? It
A
sounds like
lot.
not much. Oh,
No,
oh yeah.
but
Okay.
not because I'm saying a thing and it doesn't work. What everything I've described are for parts of our system that are meant to be long-lived intergenerational systems. So like all of those
Mm,
examples, I weed almost nil, like, you know, 10 hours a year maintaining a few acres of that. So not much. I do some. Where I say a lot though is we run a nursery where we're dependent on many, many thousands of trees growing from seed, hundreds and hundreds of cuttings. We've got like multiple micro plots of like a quarter acre here, half acre here of really high intensity production. And we grow a lot of annuals for our own food. That's where I'm weeding. The so
mm.
the cropping systems, the annual nursery cropping, the annual cropping systems require a lot. I don't know, some magic trick where you just like throw arugula in the air and the breeze will bring it perfect in, and you'll just come back with a salad bowl and it's filled. It dressing comes from the sky. Like you got to work
Right.
for this stuff. Annuals are harder than perennial systems. That's the way I do both, and I can say for
Definitely.
sure, getting really great productive hot peppers and eggplants is way way harder than growing cuttings of willow. But so it's the perennial systems they're high intensity input at first with descending energetics to maintain them. Annuals are like medium, and then it's just continually every year the same thing. So that's where the value is doing both. So you're doing the stuff, but you also have things that are like aggregating food value, carbon, minimizing effort, and then your annuals are infilling for the fluctuations throughout the years.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's very true in my experience as well. The annual stuff is just, it's so much, it requires so much more care, and the plants themselves are so much more delicate. They're not
Yep.
really meant to, the perennials can, like hardy plants can be established. They can outcompete things. Once they're established, they're good to go.
Yeah.
But these vegetable gardens require some tender love and care for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my experience.
Yeah.
Um, so, what is your thought on like living mulch in between the rows and stuff like that? Like, Look to Nature says you could use buckwheat for living mulch. What are your thoughts on that? Do you use
Um,
like living, but it doesn't really sound like it. It sounds like more you would be having food in there.
yeah. Most of our production spaces, I like almost to a fault, almost to a point where it's a little punitive and a little difficult. Our ratios of garden to access, most of the time it's like 50-50. You got a garden bed, a four by eight, and then a nice 4 foot mowed strip, and then another 4 by 8. I'm more like 80-20 or like 90-10, where it's like all bed, and then you get an 8 inch walk the plank between them. Because
Yeah,
we're not,
walk the plank.
I don't have like 20 acres and we're not on a tractor. It's like it's all human scale. And so every square inch that could be growing garlic or growing cuttings, as long as it also like helps close the canopy. That like our garlic, we grow around 8 to 10,000 heads of garlic a year for seed sale. We sell really nice elephant garlic and some heirloom hardneck garlic. And I've found weed exclusion comes by high planting density and minimal walking space. So there isn't really room for a living mulch in between that. I tend to just we rob the walkway with a shovel and feed the bed with it, and then infill as convenient with wood chips or waste hay or leaves or whatever. So we're continually robbing walkways to feed beds and then infilling with fresh material to keep the weeds down in that space. Then there are also the space, like our pathways are, or places where we drive vehicles through farm fields and things. I maintain that with a push mower or a riding mower. They're both electric, so we can recharge them with solar panels. And we have bags on the back of those, and so that's where we harvest most of our.
Ooh,
So
nice.
I actually am I'm motivated to keep a nicely tight mowed space, like where there's white clover, red clover. We leave patches for pollinators, but for the most part, it's like actually mowed pretty tight to keep the grass from expanding too much, and all of that gets pulled off and brought right into the production beds. And so a lot of our nutrient cycling happens from maintenance of the boundaries and the driving and walking access around our production spaces.
Yeah, I like that philosophy big time. Yeah, real high intensity. That's exactly what I do. A lot of people ask me about living mulches and things, and in my mind, I don't have a lot of experience with that because I've never. My pathways are so small that if a living mulch would just get trampled immediately, I mean, it would never grow.
Yeah,
Because we're only walking in this small area. Because if you've got a big wide aisleway, you can fit more stuff in there. You know.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
can speak to we do leverage cover crop like in the beds. We'll take garlic out and immediately follow it with like Sudan grass. We do like a Piper
Hmm.
Sudan grass, just get more carbon back in. We do buckwheat where it's gotten too weedy and it's a little hard to get things going. It's warming up. We'll throw buckwheat, but that's in production beds. I'm happy to have it scatter in the walkways and we just like trample it in over time. I'm not like particular about those details. Um, but yeah, we
Hmm.
use daikon. We use different tap-rooted brassicas like purple top turnip and daikon. But that's mainly in beds to prep and rebuild soil health. But our chicken composting system generates such an excessive amount of compost that we don't have an issue where beds are getting tired and they've been tilled too much and they're wearing out and we need to rest them with the cover crop. Um, they can pretty much always be cropping something of value for our system. And even like the sorghum and the daikon, all that'll get harvested and we either process it for us or we feed it right back to our chickens and then bring the finished compost to the field.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Now, I know from your watching your videos over the years, long before I started my channel, I was watching yours, and it was really intriguing. So, the chicken, the way that you use chickens is a little bit unique, but very effective seeming. So, can you explain to us what are chickens to you? How do you incorporate them? What is the magic of them? Why do you focus on them? What do you do with them? And how can somebody benefit from them?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're neat creatures. They're like you're working with some really ancient. I mean, they're bred and all that, but like you still feel like you're hanging out with dinosaurs when you're in chicken context. And we've we'll be celebrating our 10th year. I'm not sure if at certain points I want a year off from the chickens, but it just makes sense to keep going with them. Um, we've been doing our system for 10 years. It evolved. It wasn't like, oh, here's this, and I think this is important for anyone getting into this is like looking back, it feels like there's a design for this. And for people getting into it, it's like, oh man, all of these things and this matches that and it goes over here and this pathway. And how do I even begin? Because it feels like it has to all be perfect before you start. And like our chicken system has evolved every year for those 10 years. And part of it was like being frugal and also not really trusting commercial production. Like even organic mixes to feed hens, they were both very expensive and they still had stuff that didn't excite me, and it came in a plastic bag that you threw out. And so it's like, okay, I know there's food scraps at farms. I know that there's these like big blue bins behind the co-op, and they put compost in there that they pay to have someone take away. I know people put leaf bags out. I know I can get wood chips for free and hay. So like, okay, what does it look like to integrate all that? And then you can get whole seed. Like we get soft winter wheat and sunflower seed and corn that's whole. That's like a tenth of the price of having it broken apart and mixed with other stuff. And so we can just add that to all these different elements. As long as there's moisture and some warmth, those seeds will sprout. And sprouted seeds for both humans and chickens are way superior to dry or cracked or cooked seed. So then it kind of naturally flows. And then it's just a matter of figuring out your flow patterns of like nutrient comes in on one end of the thing, the chickens work with it, you build it up, they kick it apart, build it up, kick it apart, build it up, kick it apart, and it leaves the other side and there's fresh coming in. So I'm always kind of figuring out these like vortices of raw to not like it's finished. We're not going to sell compost, but finished enough to be good enough for us. And all of our stuff is not like, how do we get it to 100%? It's like when we hit 70% of good enough, it's great. Let's move on to the next thing. It's, and then it's a
Yeah,
lot
I like
easier.
that. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I like that. And so I remember watching a video of yours. So just describe to people who are not familiar, what is a chicken composting system?
Yeah, I mean, if people have, if that's really compelling, we have a playlist on our channel where we have hundreds of videos about this, almost to the point where I need to like kind of prune them out. Basically, this is permaculture again. A chicken, what is it who are they in the world? They are decomposers. They're not like earthworms. They're higher trophic level decomposer. They mechanically shred bodies. Like they help break down dinosaurs that died, or like woolly mammoths that died. They peck at them, they rip them apart, pull the hair out. They eat bugs and grubs that are growing. They eat vegetation, and they mix it all up. They grind it and they poop it out as compost or manure, which becomes compost the earthworms eat. And so like, how do we design a system that says, okay, chicken, that's who you are. You're a dinosaur that likes lots of protein, you like sprouted stuff, you like vegetation. How can we offer all of that to you and do it in a way where your work all day, your joy, your pleasure, your livelihood, your sustenance helps facilitate the aeration, the shredding, the integration, and the breaking down of raw ingredients so that we get compost, because we need that for other parts of the system. And so it's just folding in a character, considering every character an ally that has lots and lots to offer, and the burden is on us to understand their innate behavior and design around who they are. And so then when you go diametrically away from that and you say, well, chickens are 4 eggs and that's it, cool, build a giant concrete barn with no windows, jam 20,000 in there, pour grain because they can survive off that, and they'll put out eggs. And then, oh my God, how is this disease going through all the chickens? It's because you didn't think about who they are as beings at all. They're gimme eggs or gimme meat. And then it's like, ew, you have a lot. Now you've got to not inject them with stuff and medicate and all that stuff. Our hens, we have 10-year-old hens, by all accounts should be dead like years and years ago, that are still around. They don't get any medication. We don't pay for any layer feed. And they're happy and they make really nice eggs. So it's like, just do stuff that aligns with what nature actually is, and it works. Whoa, like it's actually not, it's like, duh, is what it actually is.
Hmm. Oh, I totally get that. It's very similar philosophy to me. When we look to nature, I'm always saying that when we look to nature, we can see that this and this happens. And so we can work with these systems instead of against them.
Right.
Absolutely. And
Yep.
uh, so to people that say, "Oh, well, you have to buy feed for we just have to buy feed for our chickens," is that? Do you necessarily think that that's true? And how would you go about? What are the main ways that you do not buy feed for the chicken? I mean, how do you feed them enough?
I mean, to me at this point in my life, if somebody's like, but you have to buy feed, I'm like, okay, cool, buy feed. I don't do what you want to do.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to be like, you can't like, either you find it compelling to move away from buying commercial feed, or you're locked into a thing and you've got a dogma, and then I got too many things to do to be like, let me show you. I've got to, like, let me lead you away from that. You're either into it or not. And like,
I know what you're saying.
yeah. How do we feed them enough? Are they laying eggs? So most of our flock is very old, but they still lay some eggs. We're going to get younger chickens again, but that's one metric, is like, are they laying well? Are the shells pretty thick? Like, do they take a little
Hmm.
something to crack? Are the yolks in okay shape? In the summer months, they're going to be darker. In the winter, it's a little bit weak, but those are some quick metrics. And then what are the flock dynamics? Are the hens, do they have like little cohorts and groups, but overall have a relatively flat hierarchy and minimal aggression with one another? If so, their caloric, their mineral needs are met, and their actual quality of life needs are met. And so, like, I look to our flock dynamics as like the big picture, like the gestalt of like, are we doing the right thing for our hens? It's like they eat a bunch in the morning and then they basically kick it all day. Like they just sit on the hot compost or they take naps in the sun. They like hang out in little groups and then they eat some more and then they go to sleep. We don't have like bald, pecked apart hens. We don't have blood. And so when you see those things, you can get that with layer mix all day. If they don't have anything to do, or if they're not feeling like they're not getting enough sun or air, it's the same thing with people. Like if they don't have good nutrition, good access to life, and they're pushed really hard, they get violent and they get nasty. And so you can like understand whether or not things are healthy from a big picture based on behavior and like I can glance out my window. Our flock is right in our front yard and just real quick pick up like, yeah, I better turn some compost, or they're cool for the next bunch of hours. They're like all like half asleep. They ate so much they're just laying in the sun. So that's, I mean, that's without, because I'm not a chicken person. I didn't grow up on a farm. It's like you build that, just like your cats. Are they like, you can figure out, are they on the right track or veering away from that? And you feel it and move from there.
I like that a lot. That's probably the first time that I've heard a person say it like that, as far as using flock dynamics to indicate the health status of the flock, of the chickens. It makes perfect sense because
Yep.
there'd be a lot more quarreling and fighting and resource and things like that when they're unhealthy, when resources are scarce. But if
Yep.
they've got everything they need, then it seems like they would, yeah, be chilling most of the time. Okay.
Yep.
So we have a couple of, we might kind of jump around a bit because I've
Sure.
stockpiled some questions. Okay.
Great.
Let's see here. Now, VA Green had one. Well, let's get Teats Treats first. Okay, it's $5. Thank you very much, my friend, for the
Hey.
support. Says, I am in a smaller garden. I use the nothing leaves the garden practice from permaculture. Recommendations for other principles in a small garden?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's so many like that. For folks that aren't familiar, you can look up, if you search permaculture principles, there's a bunch of them. It's basically common sense but just made into like little jingles is what it feels like. David Holmgren is the person who coined a fair number of them. But um, I mentioned before already, it's a major one, is integrate rather than segregate. Like, how can you have like, the three sisters is the quintessential traditional example of integrate rather than set. You've got your corn, which is upright. You've got your beans, which climb the corn and provide nitrogen, and the squash, which provides ground cover and keeps creatures out. Like that's a key one, I think. Value the marginal, which it feels like you're already doing, and the nothing leaves the garden. So like there isn't waste, there isn't trash, there isn't disease. There's just nutrients that need to be flowed back through the system in smart ways. Yeah, I mean, what else would there be? There's yes, slow and small solutions. That's a very common one we try to integrate. Like we'll be at a inflection point of like, should we buy some new equipment or buy this new thing? And well, what can we find from the waste stream first? What can we repair? What can we utilize? Or do we even need it? Like a lot of times there's like aesthetic sensibility that if you can like think through and shift what your lens, your sensibility is, then you realize you didn't have to buy anything. So you're like, it doesn't have to be a raised bed that's perfect. It could be that old firewood you found back in the woods and stacked up, and there's your raised bed. So it's just a few, I think. But
Hmm.
I'm sure there's more, but we can move on to something else.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Hopefully
I
that's
like that.
helpful.
I like
Hopefully
that a
that
lot.
was worth $4.99.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's a good supporter of the channel. He's a friend.
Awesome.
And one thing I would add to that, I don't know what those principles are, but one thing I would add to that is that I see a lot of people biting off way more than they can chew. So
Yeah.
I see it with chickens all the time, getting way too many, to really manage them successfully, or getting too many animals that they have to buy so much feed. or getting so many plants that they're just totally overwhelmed and that they can't take care of the ones that they do have already.
Yeah.
So that is my if that's a principle, that's one of my principles is to get what is manageable and then make that really high quality as opposed to trying to get so much so overzealous and then it all suffers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's an expanded and evolved, thoughtful example of the value slow and small solutions, right? Like keeping it focused in that way. And I think my spiel is like there's that phrase, "Go big or go home," and I prefer stay home and stay small. And because it just feels way more relaxing to me to be like, yeah, just stay. I'd rather stay at home and just keep doing small scale stuff with my hands than like, whoa, but if we did this, then we'd have that. It's like, ugh. It's just like, yeah, go ahead, man, do that. I'm just gonna hang out with my kid and my wife and our animals and our friends and like eat snacks in the backyard, and that's good enough. Like, we don't have to be this like amazing thing. Like, it's awesome to just
Right.
be where you are and not be mean. you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's a
Uh,
good place to be at,
yeah.
for sure. Okay, another one. Linda Rogers says, question for Sean. Are the plants and trees you sell available to be shipped, and how will we get them?
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so the bummer is, well, yes, we sell bare root plants in the spring and the fall that are for either local pickup or also for shipping. And we do a lot of shipping. We just had our spring sale. It was March 1st. So September 1st is our next bare root offering on our website. And so you can just make a note to come back and check it then. We sell out pretty quickly. We also kind of hit a wall of talk about stay small. Like once we hit a certain number of orders, we just turn everything back off because yes, we could generate more money. There's interest there, but it would impact our quality of life and our ability to do other things. So you'll find right now, since we are everything's sold out. If you go to our website, it's not a newsletter to like find out about our next sale. We have a thing called the permaculture nurseries list, and you can go there, and it's all different nurseries that have awesome plants, and you can buy it from other folks. So, whatever energy you'd put towards getting from us, we'd love to have you back on September 1st and later on. But people need plants now, so that's a good resource list for Canadian nurseries, for seeds, for bare root, and it's all vetted that we've either ordered from them or they're friends of ours. So anything you buy from those folks should be good quality and ethically grown.
Very good. Very good. I like that a lot. We're gonna go to VA Green's question. Says Nate, ask Sean if he can share any information about his attempts for thermal heating his high tube.
Okay, I think when you say high tube, you probably meant high tunnel. I'm
High
guessing.
tunnel. Yeah.
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 Right. So yeah, that's that. We have a little playlist on our channel where we're it kind of dipping a toe. It's not like formal, ground air heat transfer systems, but just like what is it? We have all this compost. It makes heat. Can we do things with it? Lots of attempts. None of them are like, wow, it's amazing. You can grow turmeric all through the winter in New York State in with this. But we have these piles of decaying plant matter that we put in our high tunnels. I have a greenhouse attached to my house. That's what all the light is right now. But I don't do that there because I don't want the gases in the house. But in our high tunnels, we'll basically make traditional hotbeds where it's like hot compost down low, then soil on top, and we can sow directly into that. And it really takes the edge off. So some combination of like wood chips, leaves, and urine. I mean, it's strong encouragement. That's an incredibly potent compost accelerant for high carbon compost, and then pouring a bunch of gallons of urine straight through it and hydrating it will just like skyrocket the heat. So you can get bottom heat out of composting systems in high tunnels. We've talked about different ways of doing it, but really it could just be like dig your soil out of a spot of your high tunnel, backfill it with a bunch of compostables, spike it with nutrient, and then put your soil back on top, and you'll get some amount of heat. And it was $0, so whatever, that's cool. And then you can evolve it from there if you want to.
Do you find a massive amount, a highly increased amount of insect or pest pressure having the compost pile in the greenhouse like that?
No, the pest stuff. Okay, there have been times where I added way too much urine to the inside of a high tunnel where it doesn't get rain and snow coming through. And I think the salts were a little excessive, and we ended up with a pill bug response that was really intense. And they started eating a lot of the plants. Other than that, most of the time the compost heating process, it's
Mm,
if the fertility is good and balanced, if it's intense but there's lots there, then pest issues, insect issues, they're around, but they don't seem to be problematic with our plants. Like we don't really have slugs anymore, or like we do have like flea beetles, but they're seasonal. Um, it's really like all that stuff are symptoms of imbalance in your soil fertility, like the soil health. And so as the soil gets better, things become more and more immune. Just like you're more able to be closer to immune to most disease pressures if you eat extremely well, you get sunlight, you get exercise, you get fresh air, clean water. We're not that different from plants. So that that makes the pest stuff disappear. It's just like innate health.
hmm Oh man, I know a lot of my viewers are smiling right now because they're like, "Man, you've literally are saying the same thing." I literally say that all the time. It's just
Yeah,
wonderful. I mean, when you look to the system and you understand the system, not different parts of systems, you understand the whole, and so you can. It's just intuitive knowing of how things work like that.
yeah.
So it's really wonderful. PA Perm says $2, no question. We just love you, Sean.
We love you too.
So nice. I think that might have been the person that brought us together.
Oh,
Yes.
sweet.
So yeah, I think they
Thank you.
emailed you and then emailed me. So
That sounds familiar.
um,
Thank you so much for doing that.
yes. So let's see here, and we have got Taylor Reindl, $10. Thank you very much, my friend. Says, do you have a favorite breed of chickens?
Um,
I bet
no,
not.
they're
Yeah.
awesome. They're all cool. So we started with, I jokingly say we started from seed with black Australorps 10 years ago. We got 25 baby chicks of black Australorps. They're lovely. They're big. They're really gentle. They're really mellow. But our whole policy is we just bring in whatever chickens are around. Like somebody will be like, hey, I'm interested in a bunch of chestnut trees. I've got 10 random hens. They're 3 years old. How many chestnut trees do you give me for 10? And then we just dump them in the chicken yard and give them some chestnut trees and they leave. We also get hens from a CAFO farm up north of us where they raise, I think, 5,000 hens in confinement. And then when they're 18 months old, they're considered too old to be productive. So we give them $3 a piece for those hens, and they smell bad and they're missing feathers and they cauterize their beaks, so like they're damaged, their faces are maimed, and they're like scared of milk and they're scared of like grass at first, and then it takes them a week or two and they shed all that trauma, and then there's some of our best layers. Even though their faces are messed up, they can still like eat worms and things as long as you help them out. And they heal up. I mean, they look like fancy heritage breeds. I don't even know what they are. There's some sort of red. I couldn't tell you the name of like most of our chickens. They're just awesome, like hand me downs. Like a lot of times, like somebody has a backyard flock, a fox or a mink kills most of their flock, and there are a few traumatized hens left. And our place is where those hens go because they're like, well, I'm just done. I can't do it anymore. And so we've got enough hens and a rooster in there. It's like a good inertia. Sometimes they die from predators, but not that much. Um,
How many do
anyway,
you have?
it
Would you
fluctuates,
say?
but right now probably like 40 to 50. We might harvest 10 or 20 of the oldest, maybe not this spring, and then maybe bring in, because egg prices are getting ridiculous for people, and we want to maybe bring in another 30 or 40 so that we have enough egg. We won't sell the eggs because it doesn't cost us. It costs us like $1 a day to raise these hens, so we don't need to sell eggs for it to work. But this way we have eggs that we can give to people in need, or if somebody comes to volunteer, we can offer a dozen eggs. I'd like to see about 3 to 4 dozen eggs per day coming from the system, so like everyone around us has their egg needs met.
Absolutely. Yeah. Chickens are a wonderful thing for that. When I was in the mountains in California, having chickens it's just everything. I mean, I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
It's so plentiful. The nutrition, they take the scraps. People appreciate them. Everybody loves eggs. I mean,
yeah,
it's just a wonderful thing.
yeah.
And my favorite breed, without having them
Please.
myself and being in charge of it, seeing them and stuff, is the Buff Orpington.
Okay.
What would be those are like the tan looking ones, the kind of the classic,
Hmm.
uh, I guess. That just to me looks like the most appetizing dual purpose bird.
Are they? I call them butterscotch. They're kind of like butterscotch colored.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
They're rad. Yeah, we've got a bunch. I don't know the names. They're stripies. Like they're ones that have like gray and black. Like, I should know their names by now, but
Right.
there's stripies and then there's butterscotches. And the butterscotches, they're so sweet. They're like really easygoing and really independent. Like they're the ones that go the furthest afield. Like they seem to explore and self-serve in the landscape. They feel like really good foragers. So yeah,
Mhm,
but they're all
mhm,
everybody's cool. We got these tiny little bantams that are weirdos, and they're cool. They're really good at raising babies. Like they're very mother
mhm,
centered. They're like family oriented broodies.
mm,
They're just all cool little creatures.
mm. Yeah, guys, and take note how, he's understanding the characteristics of the flock. I mean, and spending time with the flock, and that's really what it takes. It's the same with the plants in the garden. You're understanding, you're observing, you're feeling, you're seeing the characteristics, the interactions of plants, of the animal. It's just it's a wonderful way of doing things. And so, JP Exotic Pets, $20. Thank you very much, my
Mhm.
friend. Says, is cold well water bad to use? Or bad? Is cold well water bad to water the garden with using the hose? Does the cold shock them? I have a few other questions that could be answered at the end. I'll post them later. Yes, make sure you post them. I will try to see them.
Um, I can't say that I know. We farm without well water. We our whole farm is from collected rainwater or like wild water. Like we've dug ponds either with machines or by hand, and we use solar panels and pumps to pull the water. This time of year, when we're trying to get seedlings started, like we just sowed our onions. They don't look anything like yours, but yours are beautiful. They're in a high tunnel. The soil is starting to warm germination, like the brassicas are waking up. Soil's probably 50, 60 degrees. It's starting to happen. If I were to crack a hole in the ice of the pond outside and pull water directly, I bet it would hurt those things. So we pull water from cold water sources and we fill tanks that are in the high tunnel. We have an IBC tank that's in there, 300-gallon, that's paired with one of our low tunnels. We made videos about so it's a thermal battery for the low tunnel, and we pull hot air from the low tunnel and put it through a tube underground. It goes up under the tank, so it tempers the tank. I couldn't tell you what the degree difference is, but the water still feels cool. But right near freezing for stuff you're trying to germinate, like peppers and tomatoes, I imagine that hurting them. So some sort of tempering. Maybe it's like a container that you put a black surface on the south side so it absorbs some sun heat and it's near your plants, or you even just fill dark watering cans and leave them in your high tunnel so at the end of day they're warmer, then you can water with those. Just some ideas. But yeah, I can't speak to it like, oh, it'll kill everything, but intuitively it just feels like it wouldn't be that nice. I don't want a cold bath this time of year. So,
Right, right.
yeah,
Yeah. As opposed, some of us are ice bathing purposely,
that's cool. So we'll
definitely.
water we'll
But
water you right out of the pond, man. It's good.
So, for me to answer that question, I would say that it depends on the plants. When I was in Northern California growing those kind of plants, you want them to be real delicate, real. You don't want them to experience any shock. You just want them to have a nice, easy trajectory in life. And the indoor type plants and stuff like that. And so for that, I literally use an aquarium heater to heat the water. Yes.
Mhm.
But to answer that question, in any outdoor setting, no, I would not. I personally would not worry about it at all because the plants need to be able to have that kind of resilience,
Cool.
outside. So,
Great.
so I wouldn't. So to answer JP, I would not worry about that outside.
Great.
Um, okay, so let's see here. So many good questions and comments. I will have to go back and read. Let's see. Eden says, "Wait a minute, you don't have slugs anymore? Can you expand on that? Because I do have them." Did you say that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I talked about how not at all like, oh, it's perfect and there's never a slug anymore or never see flea beetles. I feel like over the years I've observed that when we've had slug. So there's this permaculture thing of you don't have a slug problem, you have a duck deficiency. Okay, like that's cute. I get it, and we
Okay.
know what we know what we're trying to say there. Like you need more robust and more like integrated solutions. But you also, if you have lots of slugs, you probably have nutrient imbalances in the garden, and the plants are expressing chemical signals of distress, and that seems to be the primary thing that slugs go after are distressed plant material. So my first order of business when I see slugs that are enough to be problematic is not how do I get rid of all the mulch? How do I set, like tin cans of old like natty ice beer out there for them to drown in? Am I
Yeah.
putting salt? Am I gonna crush them and pull them apart? It's more like, okay, let me get some aerobic compost teas happening. Let me think about putting some really healthy finished compost around these plants and watering it super deeply. Let's see if that starts to help. Um, I've learned coarse wood chips as your walkway mulch is an extremely useful habitat for millipedes in particular. And millipedes' favorite food seems to be slug eggs. So they really nip it in the bud, and they just show up. Like you've all seen this. If you move wood chips, like a pile that's been sitting there for a while, a lot of times there's millipedes in there
Hmm.
and slugs. But they like all day, every day, their thing is they want slug eggs, and so that that companion in the garden by virtue, I'm not buying millipede starter packs on Amazon. I just put wood chips, coarse wood chips in the walkway, not around my plants, and then that seems to work.
Very nice. Okay. Off the top of well, I think I already know the answer, but off the top of your head, I mean, so you say, okay, if I'm seeing slugs, is there a particular type of soil imbalance, or I know you're saying pretty much holistically speaking,
Yeah, I
right?
don't know. I mean, it's
Right.
one, and this might be for folks that are deeper into it, and you might have more ideas too. Like, do you do soil tests? I don't do them because I figure I just keep adding compost until stuff's good.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
whatever.
Hmm.
And it works. So then I just do that. But you might do well if you find like, oh my gosh, flea beetles and pill bugs and slugs and stuff looks yellow. What the heck? Yeah, maybe the $20 to $50 for a good micro and macronutrient and a pH test to tell you, whoa, my soil is freaking crazy with iron and it's really acidic, and then starting to get that balance. Um, if the time scale allows for it, then it feels as though my observation has been simply adding good quality nutrient to the soil regularly minimizes stressors and minimizes pests and all that stuff. I see
Hmm.
slugs or I don't even think of like
Hmm.
cool there's a big slug whatever. It's like it's not a problem.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's pretty, I mean, you guys know that's pretty much my philosophy as well. It's focusing on producing the healthiest plants possible, which the plant is an expression of the soil. And so focus on producing the healthiest, most thriving soil microbiome, and the plant will take care of itself. And it relatively takes care of itself. I mean, I do have a solution, a spray, a homemade spray for slugs.
Hmm.
That if you get it on them, that it does dissolve them pretty much immediately. But beyond that, it's for the most part, yeah, it's all about the prevention. So I completely, my audience knows all about that.
I'll throw one other thing. Earlier on, there was a moment for like really particularly cold, wet spring a couple of years ago where slugs were back in a way that was problematic. And I I'm not a thing. It's not a thing where it's like biodynamics perfect, homeopathy's perfect, but there are aspects to all these different modalities that feel compelling. And my wife's mother is really deeply into homeopathy, and her suggestion was a homeopathic preparation of snail shell sprayed on your plants makes them repulsive to slugs. I think it's called Helix tosta or tosta. Helix tosta is the like you can add a little bit to water, and it just you spray it on the plants, and then where we did that, it was weirdly amazing how little slug damage we had while we were getting the health back up in the soil. So something to consider if you're in the midst of a slug, like they're eating all of your starts, then and I'm saying like add compost and in a month or two it'll be better. It's like, bro, I'm
Right.
gonna
Like I have
lose
no plants.
everything right now. So
Yeah.
like, what is Nate thinking about like the spray that gets the slugs? What am I suggesting of like maybe making the plants less compelling? That's something to explore as a stopgap while you're rectifying the soil health imbalance as the core of the problem.
Oh, yeah. Very good advice. Very good advice. So let's see here. Fruit tree question from RK says, our peach trees bloomed too early last year and a frost killed the blooms off. Any out of the box ways to slow down blooming this spring? Ooh.
No.
No.
No, I don't think, if your orchard context full sun, then whatever happens, happens. What we've learned over time, we have apricots, Siberian apricots that are really neat that we get fruit once every 5 years because of early triggering of flower and then a late frost. I'm now planting our Siberian peach and apricots to the north of pine in our landscape. We have contexts where, you know, 50 yards or so to the north of pine trees, we can plant that. The soil is rich. By spring equinox to fall equinox, the sun angle is such that they get full sun. But from November-ish through March, April, the sun rides through the pines and they get almost no direct sun. So they're not triggered to wake up early. So are there microclimates where you can plant them just to the north of evergreen, such that shade in winter and spring, full sun from spring through fall. So it's like a little nuanced little light game that you can play. But that doesn't address your peach right now. But future peaches, if you're in that sort of situation, you might consider early flowering plants in cooler winter microclimates. Where is it snowy right now in your landscape? And think through what are the light dynamics there, and are those, is it well drained enough, and is it sunny in the summer enough that you might be able to plant there?
Okay, I like that. Yeah, because to me, it's yeah, there's absolutely no stopping it. Of course, once it starts, that's
Yeah,
it's nature. I
yeah.
mean, you're
Ice cubes.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. You get out there, yeah, get a snow machine out
Yeah.
there and trick it into
Yeah.
refrigerate it.
Yep.
Someone has asked several times. Frank says, "Can you discuss growing kiwi? Do you have a type of cold hardy kiwi, or what's the deal on that?"
We have hardy kiwi, Actinidia arguta, that I don't know what to do with them things, man. They're you need a male and a female, and somehow the males don't really take that well, and they're really they're getting on my nerves. I might start winding them down over time. They're interesting. They absolutely. I made a video. If you search on our channel about kiwi, I talked about and showed some examples of what I wouldn't do again with hardy kiwi, where I co-planted them with a chestnut tree. Like, oh, it's a guild; it can climb the chestnut tree, and the chestnut's like girdled and like, please kill this kiwi. So they need their own dedicated trellis. They need very vigorous, repeated pruning to keep them productive. And you need a known male, so you need to get it from a good quality, reputable nursery, um, and a known female to get fruit. You might explore Arctic kiwi, which is Actinidia colcomicta. You can look up Arctic kiwi. They're less vigorous, they're more shade tolerant, and you can grow them on a smaller trellis without it being as stressful. We just find rabbits and deer to them. They're like both way too vigorous and somehow way too fragile for the nursery, for us to have really great success. So there you go.
Oh, okay, well, there you have it. That's the end of the story in my mind. Because I was thinking the same thing. Am I going to try and grow kiwi? Maybe that's something I want to get into, but it sounds like not really. Not for the beginner, definitely.
If maybe you want like I think like, oh, we'd like to build this beautiful gazebo or like a shaded space near a fire pit or like a place to put a picnic table for the summer. We want shade for it. That's awesome. And it's like you mow around it. There aren't
Mm,
trees around it. That's a perfect place because when, where I've been, when I've had good years, it's phenomenal how much fruit you get. And they are like obscenely the best tasting kiwis ever. Like you don't have to peel them, and they're super delicious, crazy sweet. They dehydrate well,
mm.
so the fruit is phenomenal. It's just getting the growing context right, and my mistakes of thinking I can associate them with other plants and have it be compatible. Like Oriental bittersweet, people might be familiar with, as like a very aggressive vine, they're not that dissimilar, and they're like they will throttle and like the anaconda strangle whatever trees they can get on. So you can't really grow them as a polyculture in permaculture. They're isolated, doing their own thing.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. Brian says, Sean, I love the canning videos with your wife. Are you planning on more of that kind of thing on your channel?
We'd love to. Sasha is open to it, kind of into it. She doesn't feel super comfortable in front of the camera, but she's getting better with it. It's with a little kid and 5 cats and 2 dogs and an agricultural business and farming 4 different spots. Um, it's hard to do it at all. And I think what we're going to explore is leaning much further in next year when we like this growing season, as she does all this magic in the kitchen, of really letting go of let's get the kitchen clean and beautiful and then make a video and just be like,
It never happens.
this is what it looks like. It's insane right now. The sink is filled with dishes,
Yes.
but like there's a pile of beautiful tomatoes. I'm going to show you how I make salsa right now. Like push aside all the stuff and put down a cutting board and make her magic salsa because that's our life. So feeling embarrassed about how wild our scene is has been like the biggest thing that impedes. So once we get over that, I think we'll be doing because she's phenomenal. Like the stuff she makes happen is really special.
Yes, man,
Thanks for
that is
having
such a good point because I also feel that exact same way. It's like, well, I want to make a fermenting video. I got all this stuff I want to, all these ideas that I know would be great, but it's like when I go to do it, well, first you got to clean up
me. Right,
everything, make it good for the camera, and then it just never happens. The
right,
sun's gone down, and then it
right.
never gets out, and you stress
Yep,
yourself out. So it's so much. I think at this point in content creation and in YouTube and stuff, people don't, they're over just like the perfectly tailored stuff that is so unrealistic. So
yep,
someone would see that from you and think, oh, that's what my kitchen looks like. That's relatable.
right.
You
Or
know,
their
I
kitchen
think,
looks horrible compared to my kitchen. I bet I could make better
ah,
salsa. And they're like, ding.
yeah, yeah, right. I bet I could make better salsa because my kitchen's cleaner.
Right,
Yeah,
right. There
right.
you go. Yep, yep.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna be coming to an end before too long. So you guys got some burning questions um, for our guests here. Now, let's see here. There was, oops. Uh, Pop Herm again, $2. Thank you, my friend. Says, does this apply to grapes also? He said that during the kiwi question.
Mhm. Um, I don't know. Grapes are similar. I think grapes growing on other trees, I've limited experience with it. It feels a little bit more manageable. We have some grapes, some Concord grapes that I planted next to honey locust, and I pollard the honey locust at around 5 or 6 feet. So the regrowth comes out at about chest height, and the grapes climb up into the branches. And every year or two, I cut the branches when the grapes are ripe. So it's like a trellis that falls down to me. And that's worked okay. Like I haven't had huge production out of it, but I also put absolute like I just cut it and get bags of grapes every year or two. Um, that feels different than the kiwi, which I think would just be like everywhere by the end of the season and hard to manage. And the grapes are a little bit more robust. Kiwis are very fragile, so you can't just like shake them out or kind of grab the thing and pull it out. You have to like pick them and be thoughtful and gentle. So maybe grapes are a little bit more amenable to like a feral pairing. Maybe there's an ash tree that's passed away and you can let it grow there for a while. And then when there's like a very serious crop up in the canopy, you can cut in the fall and get whatever didn't get maybe it's all wine when it hits the ground or something. but you can think about pairing it that way. But I don't think very vigorous perennial vines associated to valuable trees in your landscape is a thoughtful sustainable design. Even though I'd love for it to be, it doesn't feel like it actually is.
Hmm. 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 Yes. Okay. So that's good. That's good. Adventures with Huck Finn. I got you. I see you, my friend. So the I just lost it. One second. The comments just boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom, boom,
there
and
you
so
go.
I'm like trying to see them, and then it resets and goes to the top. And okay, so okay, here's another one from our JP Exotic, who gave us the $20 donation. Thank you, my friend. Says a question: have you ever used moss in the garden or in the compost? I have huge pillow moss in the swampy area on my land.
Neat. Okay, so last fall, I picked up 6 leaf bags and I brought them home and opened them, and they were just filled to the brim with like somebody had peeled moss off of concrete somewhere and just put these like it was like astroturf of actual living moss. And
Wow.
we put a bunch in the chicken yard so that the chickens had like a nice soft thing to peck at for a while. And then we've got a stone patio that's pretty weedy, and we just ripped it up and packed it in between all the spots, and it seems like it's actually taking, and so we'll just let the patio become one giant moss pile. um, it feels like moss is not too far from like a peat context. Like, what would it look like as a mulch in potted plants around perennials? Could you put it around trees, like as a, people buy those cocoa coir mats that have a slit and they put it around their tree to retain water, and I bet you could think about that around trees. I'm speculating, I'm not saying I've done that, but partial shade around existing woody installations, that feels like it might be an interesting thing to do. I wouldn't try to eradicate it. If it's cool, it's a nice plant in the context as living, but if there's excess somehow or some has died, then yeah, how do you integrate it as a water retaining mulch, and maybe it can grab hold and continue to grow in a novel location in your spot too.
Yeah, I like that. That's probably exactly how I would try and use that too. It could keep the soil together. It could keep water from splashing up onto things, and it's a nice water buffer
Mm-hmm.
and really beautiful. Definitely, I know
Yep.
in Northern California, many people made the whole understory of their lawn just moss.
Hmm.
Yeah, really cool looking.
Neat.
So, what are some things that you would want to leave the tribe with? I mean, what are some of your? I mean, we've pretty much covered a lot of good stuff, and we really appreciate it. So what are some of your parting thoughts?
Plant things. No, um, I, I feel like the community that's in orbit around the awesome stuff you're up to. A lot of them may be involved in perennial things, but I would suspect a lot of folks are really excited about annual gardening or indoor gardening and things along that line. And I guess my word of encouragement is not like, well, if you do annuals or do permaculture and perennials, it's what does it look like to start adding more perennial aspects to your annual garden? Like, is there a place that you find it's just so hard to keep up with the grass? It's weedy. Well, maybe there's a shrub or a tree that you might consider there, or areas that are a little hard to get to that you might plant rhubarb that, a few times a year you go and harvest, and dipping a toe to the idea of adding more perennials into your system and not feeling like you either have to have a perfect design and know exactly what you're doing, or that wherever perennials are, like I have an annual garden, how would I do it? Perennials and annuals get along. It happens in nature. That is the ecological successional arc of things. Is there's disturbance, there's annuals, there's biennials, and then it starts moving up into woodies and into trees. So how do you kind of like dip a toe into that reality and that inevitability, and then maybe at some point think about like starting to swim in that flow of like annuals, but also letting it move up through succession with annuals in the eddies, if that makes any sense. So
Hmm.
it's
So,
where nature will take you, so go with it is my suggestion.
what would be your what would be if somebody is wanting to get their feet wet and has no experience with like perennials? They're just annual vegetable garden. What would be some concrete things that you would suggest for them to get their feet wet?
Plant some perennials, like get over the hump of it. Maybe you'd have like truly like what are the most marginal, hard to manage or weedy parts of your existing stewardship, and do you really want to go in there and hand weed all the time in order to get the minor celandine out so you can do lettuce again? Or there's just like unending creeping Charlie, and I hate having to pull it all the time to get my kale going. Those are the places to think about. Maybe I want to do some pollinator patches there. Maybe I want to grow some medicinal herbs. Maybe there's a area underneath some trees that gets good light and it's all garlic mustard outside of the fenced in area. Maybe I want to add in some currants, some elderberries, some raspberries. That's where they would naturally show up anyway, and just see what that looks like and feels like. So a little bit here or there. They're like discount trees at the box store that look really sad. Give them a home. Like they're probably root bound. They probably won't make it, but there's $8 for a thing. Like put it outside of your fence if you're worried about it taking over. But that's the biggest thing, is the encouragement that there is not a opposition of, are you an annual gardener, farmer, or a perennial nursery orchard person. It's all those things are both compatible and compelling, and the plants actually do really well together. And just getting over that hump of like, I'm not sure. It's the marginal hard to manage is where you begin, because you already have a hard time there. Do less by putting a thing in and letting it just be there and see what it does, right? Keep your
Mhm.
4x8 absolute perfect raised garden beds for like exquisite leeks and carrots and perfect beets. You don't have to put like comfrey everywhere, but
All right.
where's it hard, plant it with something big.
Hmm. I like that. I like that philosophy. Look to Nature Homestead, $5 says, keep being awesome. Well, thank you very much, my friend. So, man, we've had a great conversation. Our philosophies align so much,
For sure.
and you speak about it in such a way I can just feel the depth of understanding of the system. You know, you speak about it in way it's like a poetry. So I
Hmm.
can relate very much with that. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
spreading that message on this channel and on your channel.
Likewise,
Um,
yeah. Thank you for all the work. It's wonderful that we're both out there sharing what we're doing as we go, and holding space for like lots of other folks to real like, I'm sure you're figuring it out as you go along. Like I don't know your full history, but do you have an agricultural training, or is this something you got into and started? Right. That Me neither. I went to school for fine art. I liked to play music. It was fun. And then gardening started being interesting, and dot dot dot, like it builds on itself to the point where you feel like you have something to say about it after 20 years of messing around with it. And everyone has the innate right and ability to interact with nature to facilitate growth. Like all beings do some sort of gardening. And the more you're out there, the more you see birds planting seeds with their poop, and you see squirrels putting nuts in the ground, and you see like the wind gardening, you see rain gardening. And so there's the the boundary to get into it or to start doing more planting. It's really just in the mind. Like we're all gardeners, growing and learning as we go. So um, and I want to say like a big thank you for you to invite me on and share this space. I feel like you've got like a really great style, and you really know what you're up to in a solid, deep way. And it was a pleasure to have the whole thing guided, and it flowed really, really wonderfully. It was an enjoyable time and space for me. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, man. My pleasure. Guys, if you would like to see um, collaboration video, well, there will be. I can feel already. We will definitely do like some kind of actual collaboration video or videos. We don't know yet, but let us know in the comments. What would you like to see? I mean, many of you know both channels, and you know that some kind of, we kind of focus on different things. We're saying the same stuff. We focus on different things. What would be a good collaboration? Brainstorm with us. So you can put it in the comments after the fact, and we will get the gears turning. So,
Can I throw
Sean,
one
if
just
of
one more
course,
really quick thing? As we're
take your time.
talking, I'm looking at these comments that are flowing through, and I see a common thread with your community as what we get to enjoy with Edible Acres. You've got like seriously lovely, thoughtful, friendly, supportive, interesting people. It says a lot about who you are, and it says a lot about them too. So like a lot of people are sharing like appreciation for this time today. And for me, like being in a space where it feels like I can't see all these people, but I just get the feeling there's not people out there, oh, but you're wrong and this and that. And it's like, it's gentle and it's thoughtful and it's awesome. And it gives me a lot of like really positive hope about there's a wild world we're in. And it feels like there's a lot of like sweet people trying to do nice things. So your community is
Mm,
rad. And thanks for
mm.
hanging out with me today.
That's an absolutely spot on observation. This tribe is just amazing. I mean, everybody's super helpful to each other. They're all helping each other out in the comments, and that's pretty rare in the online space. That
Yeah,
I've noticed.
for
In
sure.
the comments and everything like that. So yeah, it's this a wonderful group. That's why I always ask for a thing. If there's things I don't know, I can ask them, and everyone's helpful and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just wonderful.